welcome to our webinar today on our client accounts. So if everybody is ready to take their client account skills to the next level, we're going to explore some smarter ways to manage our client accounts. We're going to cover reconciliation, best practices, go through account automation features, and also a few reporting tools that'll help you stay on top of your debtors and creditors with confidence. Before we begin, we're going to start with something fun, which is a poll. So Olivia and I are really curious about how confident everyone is in dealing with their client accounts right now. Now, you should see this popping up, so please pop in your answers, but we're really curious because hopefully by the end of this session, we hope that you feel a little bit more confident and you've learned some other things that are going to really help in your day-to-day practices. So while everyone's responding to this, I'm just going to touch briefly on what a client account is, and then we'll go from there and see our results of our poll. So if we jump on in, when we create a lovely booking, down the bottom there, we'll have a client account created. Now, these booking client accounts, or these client accounts, are where we store all of our payments, our charges, our credits, our refunds, even where our invoices and receipts are stored related to this particular booking. So everything we need to know is in one central location, so we know how much the guest needs to pay us back. Now, in some cases, it might not be our actual guest paying us back. So we have different client account types. Now, if we jump back to our booking, we have our lovely booking here, and we have the booking client account. Now, this booking is part of a group. We might not want to have all of those different bookings within the group having individual client accounts, meaning we have to go into each separate one to record each of those payments to see where all those charges are. So that's where we can have a group client account. So if I jump into my lovely group, I can see that I have the option to put all of those charges and payments and credits and refunds related to the entire group into that one central location. This makes it really easy to see everything at a glance and know exactly where this group is sorted to. Once again, because it is billing to the group, this means my group guest contact is the person that is responsible, whereas at the moment, both of my bookings are billing to the individual booking and the individual booking client account, meaning John is responsible for his booking and Jane is responsible for hers. We also have the option of adding or linking companies or travel agents to our bookings. Once again, this is just another client account type, letting us know that we have the option of having our company be responsible for all these charges and payments, or even our travel agent if we need to get the funds from them instead of our guest. We also have our guest client account. Now, this one's a bit different. It usually isn't used for anything to do with our bookings. It's more designed for, and generally the only time you should be using, is if this booking cancels and they can't make it. They have some money that they've already paid. We want a safe place to store that credit for that future booking because we don't have that future booking created yet. So that booking client account or that group booking client account just doesn't exist. So guest client accounts are for holding those future credits, that just a nice little place to store them until we are ready to use them later. The other type of client account we have is a cash account. Now, cash accounts are great for those miscellaneous charges. So if somebody comes off the street and wants to buy an ice cream, they don't have a booking. We don't need to create a guest account for them. We are probably never going to see them again. We just literally want to record that an ice cream was purchased and a payment was made. So the cash account should always be showing this is the charge and payment, and it should always be a $0 balance because the person that's coming and purchasing that item is paying for it at the time. We don't need to record or follow up with those. So really great way to track, once again, all of those different charges in those unique areas. Now, if we do jump back to, if we do see our poll. So we might run or release the results of our poll and see how everyone's going. So I can see that we have a few of you that are really confident with your client accounts, which is fantastic. I'll try and go through a few of the extra little tips and tricks to take it even further. But for majority of us, we're confident, but there's still some areas that aren't quite fully on top of. And all of that is just practice and understanding how things work. And that is literally what this webinar is for today, to review those areas to get you feeling more confident. So that is absolutely fantastic. And I love whoever popped in the funny little answer we had here of completely lost, send help. Obviously, you have our lovely support team if you ever do get stuck on everything. So perfect. Let's continue through. So just recapping, we've got our our client accounts where all of our billing items are stored. We have different client account types, which let us know who is going to be responsible for paying those charges and where we're going to be popping those particular payments. Now we're going to take it one step further. Let's jump into our good old guest of John. Now, John wants to make a payment. Now we know that when he decides to pay his booking deposit, that we can obviously select what type of payment that he's paying, maybe using the credit card gateway, and we can click to process. We know the second we click that process button, a beautiful receipt will appear for us to forward through to our guests. Now, you may not know already, but you can also choose to adjust how that receipt will appear. Now, these all pull through from what's called your system templates. So if you want to change formatting or have different receipts appear if they are a long-term guest, so our permanents, or just simple, or keep our little receipts simple for everybody else, you can actually adjust these and select from here which receipt and which format of that receipt that we want to select. I'm just going to keep the normal receipt one. And we're going to process. John has now paid his deposit and we're going to see a copy of our receipt. So down the top here, I'll just refresh that one, we have our breakdown of what's happened in our receipt. And this works just like if you go to the grocery shops. It's going to tell us exactly what we have paid for and only what we've paid for. It's not going to show us the next week's shop because we weren't paying for it right now. So in this receipt, we can see that we did pay for our charge, which was $250, and we do have our payment here of $250. This receipt isn't designed to show the additional charges. This is just to show that we have received a payment, and this particular payment is paying off this particular item or charge. If we did want our guests to see a little bit more about what was happening with their account, we can jump back to our client account. We can see we have our charges and our payment. We can then instead send an invoice to our guest because obviously there are a few things that he hasn't paid for yet. So by selecting these items or some of these items and going down the bottom to invoice, we can group these charges into an invoice. We can just click save now if we're happy with it. Fantastic, nothing else needed. If we want to be a little bit more picky, we can add or adjust extra settings on this page. So one item is if we want to adjust the description. Something else might be to add a purchase order so that when this invoice appears, some companies do require purchase orders to be part of their invoice. We can just pop in here. Now, due date. This one's really important. I'm going to go through it a little bit later, but there's some amazing things you can do based on that due date. Your instance settings actually control how many days in advance that one will update for. So feel free to jump to your instance settings if you do want to adjust that default date range that will appear. You can even set a final notice date. So if the balance of this invoice is due on the 29th, but if they haven't paid it by the 1st of August, there is a final notice, something is definitely kind of happening. We can even highlight this invoice even further, once again, if they haven't paid. I'll show you how that looks a little bit later. Down the bottom here, we can see all of the items that this invoice is attached to. We can tweak it, we can remove it, we can play around with it if we need to. On the top right-hand side, our invoice issued to. Now, if I had have connected this booking to a company, like my previous one, I could actually just simply select that company from that drop-down. I'm still keeping all of my charges in the booking client account, but on my invoice, it's going to show clearly that it's invoiced to the company. I can also adjust my grouping. So all of these items on my invoice, I can adjust how they appear. There's lots of different options, and there is a really good video tutorial that goes through this, so feel free to look at that one later, or even just play around with those settings. This one here, just like our receipt, you can change the format of your invoice. You can duplicate the existing system templates for your invoice, create new ones, maybe for your permanents, they might be a little bit different. Play around with those, and then you can select which invoice is most applicable in that formatting. Once again, I'm not actually going to change anything here. I just wanted to run through those couple of settings and then click Save. Now that we have saved this invoice, I can see a nice little recap or a summary at the top. I can see my 3 charges are part of my invoice. And because my payment was linked to those charges, I can see the payment going towards the invoice already. So the total of all these charges is $750. The payments already received that are reconciled against those charges is $250, and therefore we have $500 due. Now down the bottom, most important, how is our guest going to pay for these charges? You can adjust your invoice template to include those different items or ways of paying. Now this might be BPay, this could be funds transfer. You can even update these system templates to include an insert field for pay invoice online. Now this little link will take your guest to the guest portal where they will be able to enter their invoice ID and last name and pay it online. Super quick, super easy, super convenient for your guests. But if we jump back to our client account, we can see, ooh, I think I unticked a few. Let me jump back. There we go. So, cool. Jump back. Okay. So we have this invoice. Oh, there we go. And we can see with that little arrow that within this invoice, all of these charges are part of it. Now, if this invoice is unticked, it'll just group it nice together so it's really nice and tidy. Now, if I get another charge, let's say maybe for firewood, and save, this brand new charge isn't part of my initial invoice. So it's nice and clear, it's separate. My guest has already been invoiced this amount. This is something extra. It will not automatically link into this invoice. Now, my options now are that I can select the charge and create a brand new invoice to send out to my guest. I can select my existing invoice and I can edit this invoice and I can add that charge to the invoice and resend that to my guest, letting them know that this has been updated. Or another option I can do, if I jump back to my client account, is right up the top here. I can print or email a client account statement. Now, these are especially good when you have those really big bookings with maybe companies or groups. They have edited it and changed it and shortened and extended. They've paid partial amounts and moved things, and it's all become really confusing based on all the changes that they're making. We want it to be nice and transparent. We want to be nice and clear that we aren't trying to scam them. We're literally trying to just get what they owe us. So to help them see exactly where their client account is, just like we can see how tidy and clear everything that's included, we can jump up the top here and email or print that statement. I'm going to click print so that we can see how this will look. So if I go into print statement, just like we had on the previous page, we have that breakdown of all the different sub-client accounts. So accommodation, they owe us $510, and for everything else, it's zero balance out. They don't owe us for electricities and other items there. Down the bottom, just like we had on the previous screen with our client account ledger, we have that breakdown of our payments, our invoices, and our charges below. Once again, super transparent, super clear, especially when it starts getting busier or crazier, that we can send this copy to our guests so that they know exactly where they're at and everything that has occurred with this account. Now, if I wanted to adjust any of these settings, there are a few different options down the bottom before I printed it out. Or if I wanted to email, I can click the email button at the top. Now, I can send this one by one, but maybe I have quite a few bookings that I want to forward through and send these client account statements. So from any of those client account lists, let's use our guest in house as an example, I can bulk select, or I can remove anyone that I don't need to send it through to. And I can email statement exactly the same way, just in bulk. By clicking this button, it'll select all of those guests. It will automatically attach those client account statements. Now, it will only send John his and Sue hers and Jane hers, so they're not going to be CC'd into everyone's emails. And we can even filter those client account statements even further by date range. So if you have guests that are staying long term, maybe you want to give them that financial year's date range. They don't need to see all the way back from 10 years ago when they first arrived. Maybe just from a period from. And maybe you just want to see items that are not paid. You don't want to show them everything, just items that are owing. You can switch that setting there as well, or even just focus on particular sub-client accounts. Now, when you're sending that email, you can have the option of grabbing the contact template of statement attached. That's just going to pre-fill your email content, so you can go ahead and send. So nice and easy, guests are well and truly informed of everything to do with their account, and then they can figure out what they have misunderstood or what they need to follow up with. But you have given them everything that you need and can leave it there and just follow up on payments. Okay, so now we're going to go through our next booking. So, where did John go? Going to jump into John Brown. So John Brown is booking 128056. Awesome. So let's jump into John. So for John's booking, he owes us some money. He has a lovely booking. We want to get that payment from him. So we can select from down the bottom. Now, John might only want to pay a partial amount. Maybe we might decide to just charge him $250 by credit card gateway and process. Oh, wait, no. Cool. Actually, we might jump into our next example of Sue. Where is Sue? I'll grab this one. Okay, so within these client accounts, we have a whole heap of items that are there. And the whole point is understanding exactly what's happening on our client account so that we know what's happening and we can obviously tell our guests where they're at. So at the top of here, we can see that we have an invoice to our guest for that first month of January. Now, this charge we can see isn't a normal quoted nightly rate. This is a repeat billing item. We are charging them monthly instead of having 30 or 31 individual nightly fees. Makes it really, really tidy. If you do have any long-term guests, you really should look at our repeat billing video tutorials that go through how to manage these more effectively. So we can see that there was a charge for Jane for that first month, and we can see that she's paid for that first month as well. We can even see really quickly and easily that we have a reference ID here, letting us know that this payment was taken through the credit card gateway. We can then see that she was charged a bond and she paid this in cash. From then, we've got the next month and the payments getting paid in cash or direct debit. Nice and straightforward, letting us know exactly what has happened in the real world. Now, you might notice our bond is appearing in a bright yellow. Now, the reason for this is because our bond is a refundable bond. When that guest does decide to check out, we are going to, hopefully, as long as they haven't done anything they shouldn't, be able to refund this money back to her and remove this charge. Now, when you are checking out a guest, it's really easy to click avoid button to remove this one. But the handy thing is with these is, I'll show you how it looks. If we were to manually void it prior to checkout and refresh our page, it's still going to appear here. They were still charged the bond. It's not like we didn't get it from them, but it's going to clearly show that it was voided. This is going to help staff as they are reviewing these items to track if bonds have been given back or refunded or everything we need in this central location. It wasn't that we didn't charge them the bond, it's that we did, but it has been given back. This has then released that cash payment that we had previously. We can refund if this was our checkout time. However, we also have additional items down the bottom here, which are our invoices. As we can see here, if we have an unpaid overdue item, so an invoice that on that invoice, when we were creating it, we could set that due date. If it's exceeded that date, it's going to appear in yellow. And that's to highlight it for you and your staff so that you know it's not just, hey, they owe you something, but hey, they owe you something and they've well and truly been given enough time to pay this. We need to start following up. So within those lovely invoices, this is a way of being able to track this info really quickly, really easily, rather than having to look at every single item. Down the bottom, we also have a few extra little settings here. Actually, before we do, no, let's continue now. We can obviously click our button down the bottom to expand those invoices, see exactly what charges there are, but we do have a ton of extra settings down the bottom to adjust how these client accounts appear. One thing is that we can default that those invoices will expand automatically. We don't have to click into them to see them. And we also have the option to show voided items. So if we had been in this account yesterday or previously, and we knew that we had sold Jane some firewood, but it's not showing here and we don't know why. Or maybe the account doesn't seem quite right and we're worried that maybe some items were voided that shouldn't have been. We can go to show voided items. By reloading this page, it's going to show these voided items in red and tell us when the items were voided. If we actually click onto these charges, it will actually also tell us who voided the items. So if, for instance, our firewood down the bottom here was not meant to be removed, our guest definitely paid for it, they haven't returned it, we can then find out why our staff member removed this charge. We're still charging them. The other things you can do down the bottom here is show paid items. So if we don't want to see items that are paid, we just want to see those overdue items or even those payments that haven't been reconciled against charges, we can click to reload. This is going to tell us any payments that are not applied to a charge and any charges that have not been paid. This is where it's really important to make sure that you are selecting a charge by clicking pay if you're on the client account so that you know which payment is paying off which charges. Some other settings that you can play around with is reverse display order. As we notice, this guest is going to be staying with us for a long time and all of our newer charges are all the way down the bottom. This is eventually going to get further and further down the page. We generally want to see the most recent items. So if we set reverse display order and reload our page, we can see now the 1st of January is down the bottom and our more recent items will appear at the top, saving us having to do that scroll down every time we deal with those guests to figure out where everything's at. I'm actually going to switch it because I do prefer having it the other way. There we go. Perfect. Lovely. So now we have all of our different items showing in the way that I'm happy with. Now, if I do instead prefer some of these different settings, I can actually default the page rather than having to update these down the bottom every single time. As you may already know, this option or this cog means that I can make some customizations or changes. The first one is I can default those settings. I can default these just for myself if they're just my personal preferences or for everybody at my property of Newbook Beachside. I can untick any of the defaults and I can then adjust it in the way that I want it to be. If I don't want to make any changes, I can then click cancel. Other changes I can make is I can add additional columns into my client account ledger here. If I go into this configuration, once again, I can update for myself or for everybody. Maybe I want to see arrival dates or reference IDs or which sites they were connected to. If I do make some changes and then I go, oh, I prefer it the way it was originally, I can always come back here to restore those defaults. And finally, tab configuration. This is especially good for these kind of bookings, or if you do have lots of repeat billings. Now, this section is so handy all the way down at the bottom to tell me when my next run is for that next charge and what that next amount is and where my guest is paid up until. This even lets me pre-generate charges for future months if my guest wants to pay in advance. But if my guest is staying for such a long time, scrolling all the way down to the bottom of the page can take extra time that we don't really need it to. So I can adjust and move this section all the way to the top. How I can do that is using my tab configurations. This lets me know the order of how things are currently, and I can move my repeat billing up to the top. And I can even add in tab breaks if I don't want it to disappear underneath, or I don't want my client account information to disappear under my repeat billing tab. And save. Now that I've saved it, I can see my repeat billing is literally right at the top here. I don't need to scroll all the way down to see where my guest is paid until and click to generate any extra charges there. So it saves me a lot of time. Other things with this page I can adjust or tweak or even remove are things like my void buttons or the settings on this page. So if I had a brand new staff member, I might not want them to be able to click a void button. I might not want them to be able to issue a refund. They are brand new. They aren't used to what's happening at my property or my processes. So when you're creating those new users, you can set user profiles and restrict the privileges of what they have access to. So if you are someone that's missing some of these buttons, you can't find them, or even trying to locate certain pages in Newbook, it just simply means that your user profile just doesn't have those privileges. Technically, that can work out in your favor half the time if your boss or your manager says, oh, you need to void this, or you need to go to this page and run this report. If you don't have access, that's a shame, I can't do it. They'll have to do it, and you can focus on your 10 million other tasks that you are busy with anyway. So that I find that quite handy. So once again, Newbook is all about adjusting the system, customizing it based on what you need in your role, what you need access to, and stripping out anything that's not needed. So definitely have a bit of a jump in, have a look at those fantastic ideas. We have another poll that I'm curious on, and we're going to start going through some automation in Newbook on especially our client accounts. So what is everyone kind of, if you want to jump into that poll, what kind of automations are you using already? I'm going to let that poll go and we're going to continue going through what reconciliation is. So start popping that in and we'll go through it shortly. Now, with this guest, you may have already noticed that we have a few charges showing as unpaid and we have some payments that aren't showing in that green color, letting us know that they're connected. Now, reconciled means that we can see, like at the top, that our payment or our charge here is getting paid by this payment down the bottom. We know this payment is paying off this charge. Now, this comes in really handy when we get down to the bottom of the page. So we can see that a staff member has accidentally selected our next invoice and clicked pay when taking our payment down the bottom here. So we've paid the wrong invoice off, which is why our invoice above for June is showing as unpaid and overdue. Now, make sure you are selecting these correctly so that obviously everything is showing nice and accurately. Now, usually this will be nice and handy because when we are going to apply this lovely 114 payment to our 114 electricity charge, it's making it really clear what charges our guests have paid and what is still overdue. This is all what we want. We want you to be able to jump straight into this account and know these payments we're paying off these charges. This is what's left from the guest. This is what they owe us. This is really, really important because when our guest comes to dispute to any charges, or if we are checking out a guest and they do have overdue charges, this guest might know that they have paid $114, which was meant to be towards their electricity charge. If we haven't reconciled these, this charge is showing as unpaid and we are unsure if that $114 is meant to be paying off our invoice at the top or if it's meant to be paying off our electricity charge. We need to make that nice and clear. So I'll show you how we can adjust those after we read the results of our poll. Okay, fantastic. So very few of you are using all of them, but a good chunk of you are using majority of them, if not all. Or at least you know about them, but haven't had the opportunity to set them up. So we're going to go through these later, but I'm really excited about our 22% who didn't even know some automations like these were available. So we're going to go through these, and I hope at the end of this that gets you inspired to set them up and get them up and running. So jumping back to reconciling. Okay, so within here, if we know that, I'll untick these little lines. If we know that a electricity charge is meant to be connecting, we can actually just jump in and connect it. Now, if it was a balance or a client account with a $0 balance, and we don't need to go through one by one to show which one is matching to what, we just want everything to connect, we can do this really quickly and easily and go to our account options at the top and click reconcile. Now I could just click the run reconciliation and that will just connect the oldest payments with the oldest charges, which is usually what we want. Now, if we did want to restrict this by client account and just have items or payments regarding our accommodation charges linked to our payments for accommodation charges, we could pop that and restrict it here. And we can even set it to restrict as per the generation date. So if we only wanted it to reconcile up to a certain date, and then any other charges or payments we don't worry about or don't reconcile just yet. I generally find clicking the rubbish bin removes that, because especially for those cases where we have a $0 balance and we know that everything down the bottom should be showing as charges paid but isn't right at the moment, we just want them to connect. I find that handier, quicker, easier, and there's no restrictions that may potentially be affected. We're going to run reconciliation. Now, I've actually set this up for the purpose of maybe not breaking it, but for having things link incorrectly. So down the bottom here, we have, I forgot about my little charge at the top here. So we have our 114 payment, but our electricity charge is still showing as unpaid. Now, in the back of our minds, we know this is meant to be connecting. They're the same amount. We need to reflect this. But Newbook has correctly done exactly what we've told it to. It's reconciled the oldest payments with the oldest charges. Now, because we did have this overdue invoice up the top here, Newbook is attempting to pay that one off first. Now, in the cases where maybe our guest comes back to dispute that, and they're saying, no, our electricity is done, but yes, we still need to pay our monthly site fees, we can actually find and reallocate those charges and payments. So if it was, we know this invoice should not be getting paid off yet, that we're still following up with the guest, we can open the charge and we can select the payment or payments that it's connected to. Alternatively, if we know from our client account that this payment of $114 was meant to be paying off our electricity charge, we can click into this payment, we can edit our payment, and we can choose what it's applied to or which charge. So we don't want it paying off our monthly site fee, we want it paying off exactly our electricity usage. So I'm going to head and save that one. So down the bottom now, because we've reconciled everything correctly, or we've ensured the correct payments are applied to the correct charges, we can see our electricity is all sorted, but we still just do have this overdue invoice at the top here. Now, technically, this payment most likely was meant to be applied to our 1st of June, but I want to keep this one as overdue on purpose for something else that we're going to go through shortly. So we've gone through bulk, we fixed. I want to just quickly jump into one of our other client accounts. So some other options you might notice, where are we? Is if we wanted to refund one of our bookings that we just closed. Where is good old John Brown? Another thing we can look at, this is really handy when you have been working with a lot of bookings and accidentally close tabs. If you add in recent items using your user interface settings, this is going to help you find that booking that you just closed and didn't mean to with those most recent ones. So let's jump into good old John Brown. Now, John Brown did, as we saw, he'd made a payment towards his booking, but actually he gave us the wrong credit card information and wants a refund back to that card so he can use another one. Or he could have paid more than he intended to. Sometimes staff will accidentally take that full balance when they only mean to be taking a deposit. In either case, if we jump into his client account right now, we can see that his payment is currently fully applied, or both of his payments are fully applied. Now, if it was that he was only meant to have paid maybe $50, not that full $200, if we were to try and refund that money, Newbook's going to actually add a safety to tell us, well, this payment is already paying something off. It can't both be used to pay off the charges above and be refunded as well. So as a safety, if you are wanting to refund this payment, you just simply need to do basically what we've been doing already, which is clicking into our payment, selecting edit, and then unapplying these additional funds because we want to free up that money. So let's just say that he only meant to be paying that firewood and not his charges just yet. We can untick this, we can leave that firewood attached and save. Now, if we look down at this booking, we can see our payment and only $10 is applied of it. So if we were only meant to be paying off that firewood, we can now refund that remaining amount that we had accidentally taken too much of. We can select our payment, we can click refund, and once again, that safety feature is going to kick in. It's not going to let us refund that full $250 because $10 was meant to be giving back to, or paying that firewood. It's going to allow us to give that $240. So this is really great. By having these items reconciled, we don't accidentally, as staff members, refund more than what we should be. And then we can click the nice little refund button. So another kind of scenario that you might come up against is if you are jumping into a booking. It's well and truly been and gone ages ago, but that edit booking button just doesn't seem to exist. Or if you jump into the client account, or actually, if we even jump before the client account, our lovely guest didn't pay us and we finally got them to actually follow up with us and give us that money. But that booking little button to pay their balance is showing straight up. And in our client account, none of those tick boxes that we've seen all through this webinar are showing here to select, and there's no pay button down the bottom. This is another safety feature. This guest has well and truly been and gone ages ago. Usually we should have had this account settled by the time of checkout. So it's actually frozen this account for us, but we do know that sometimes clients are annoying and you do need to have that extra little bit of flexibility to go back and follow up with them. So at the moment, this client account is active. If we were ready to take Jack's payment, just because it's taken so long to get back to him, all we have to do is go to this booking client account, edit, and reactivate. That'll bring this client account back to life. And as we can see here, our little buttons have appeared like normal. We can click the pay button. We can even go back to our booking page and click that balance button to take that next payment. So really quick, really easy. It is designed for the safety of this account because we don't want staff accidentally making changes to historical bookings when they shouldn't be. So if you do notice that, just keep in mind to scroll up the top to see if that account is active. Cool. Another thing that happens very rarely, I can't even replicate this one. It's such a rare thing to see, but I do want to flag it. Is if we did have a payment down here and it was showing as over or under applied, this usually means that it's most likely probably one of those insane bookings that has changed a million times, where we did have maybe a $100 payment paying off a $100 charge, but that charge is now inflated and now is $200, or all of those different changes have kind of made that $100 payment try to pay off a $200 charge, which is not possible. So that will highlight and make it nice and clear on this page. It will, I think, be a bright yellow. But how to resolve that one is literally just to jump into that payment exactly like we've been doing, edit and save. You don't need to make any extra adjustments. It's just doing that bit of a refresh so that it recalibrates. So in those cases, definitely nice, quick and easy to adjust. We're going to jump into a different client account now. We'll go back to Jane's. With Jane's, as I was saying before, we've got all of our repeat information up the top here, showing really nice and tidy. But reconciling our charges is really important to the correct figures, because otherwise it's not going to show that paid until correctly. When you are reconciling those different charges to payments, or even just leaving it blank, it's going to tell you exactly where that client's paid up until. If that guest wants to know, fantastic, you can give them those dates. Whereas if you start to reconcile incorrectly, this is where it's not going to know how to calculate as it should. So make sure you are make sure you are setting those correctly and reconciling what should be connected. The other thing you can do is, as I said before, generate those charges prior. So Newbook is already going to create that new charge on the 1st of August for $4.45, but if that guest wants to pay in advance, we can click to generate additional charges. Now, another way you can kind of deal with guests that are fantastic and want to pay in advance is to go to your Newbook, your instance settings. In your instance settings, reconcile, we have this setting here to automatically reconcile our repeat billing using any existing balance on the account. This means if we did get more money from our guests, they want to pay X amount of dollars in advance, rather than having to do that extra work of generate that extra charge and then take that payment, we can get Newbook to just automatically know that if there's a payment in that account, we just want it to grab that charge when that charge is created. So it's already paid off, so no extra steps for us, which is absolutely fantastic, saves a lot of time. Also ensures everything is up to date as it needs to. Also, another really good setting here is our invoices. As we know, with our repeat billings, they create invoices automatically, which I'm going to show you some fun things for in a second. But we can also auto-generate invoices for all of our bookings, or maybe just our manual bookings, or maybe just our online and channel manager bookings. So this setting here can be quite useful, especially if you're about to do what I'm going to show you next. If we jump back to our accounting tab, having those invoices raised mean that you can get Newbook to automatically send invoice reminders. You can choose when that initial reminder will send out, and after that date, how often that reminder will continue to send out while that invoice is showing as overdue. So Newbook will continue to remind your guests that, hey, they do have that invoice and they do need to pay that. Now, you can set this by default for all of your new client accounts, or if most of your guests are absolutely fantastic, or you just generally have tourist bookings. But our good old Jane here, she's really forgetful. She doesn't remember any time. She really tries. She just needs that extra assistance in remembering to pay her bills. So if that's the case, we can leave our instance settings exactly as is. And just for the applicable client accounts or our forgetful guests, or even our guests that are less forgetful and more decide not to pay us, or see how long they can push it, we can update their invoice settings. So any invoice linked to this specific client account will get these particular reminders and be a bit different to everybody else. If I go into edit, I can then go into my invoice settings, and I can choose that I want Jane to receive some invoice reminders. She's very forgetful. We want to help her as much as we can. We can choose when we want to send that initial invoice reminder. Once again, this is going to be based on the invoice due date. So what you pop into that field is really important. If you do need to tweak it or adjust it when you are creating it, please make sure to do so. With our initial invoice reminder, I might decide that maybe I even send it one day before the invoice due date, so that my guest has plenty of time to make sure she's all paid up on time. Most of the time, it'll maybe be after the due date. Maybe we're nice and we give Jane a whole week after that invoice due date to try and remember on her own. And after that, every single invoice reminder, we might decide to go a bit crazy and we're going to have it go every single day. So she still has 7 days to pay that invoice, and it's only going to remind her 7 days after the invoice is technically due. But then after that, she's well and truly had plenty of time and a reminder. We want to keep making sure that she is knowing that she needs to follow up on that. And most of you are probably doing this manually, where you are having to call the guest, you are manually sending emails. That takes so much time. We don't need to be wasting that time for us to do it. We can get Newbook to do that for us. We can be the last resort of if they still aren't looking, but we can get Newbook to do all of that hard work and those soft, nice reminders of, hey, just a friendly reminder, this invoice is overdue. So within here, we can set those nice little settings. Within here, if our lovely, lovely guest was maybe not so lovely and they are basically seeing how much they can get away of, we know we are wasting so much of our manual time, even after setting this up, in trying to follow up with this guest, that it's getting a bit, I suppose, rude from the client, or from our guest perspective, that they should have paid this well and truly. We can actually create late fees to automatically create to basically reimburse us for the time that we have wasted following up with this guest. So if it was that Jane wasn't so nice and she is just literally trying to get away with not paying, we can, after obviously doing all of these wonderful invoice reminders, we've gone above and beyond to try and help her with making those payments. We can get Newbook to automatically create a late fee if she hasn't paid her invoice in time. Now this one's also really quick and easy to set up. We jump into our late fees. We add late fee. We can type in the name, which could just literally be late fee. We can set what that amount might be. That could be a percentage of the invoice, or it could just be a fixed amount. It's going to go 10. And we can choose how many days after that invoice due date. So once again, for that particular Jane, we've got 7 days after the invoice is due. Then we've got it sending every single day thereafter. So maybe we go 14 days after that due date. She's well and truly had one, or probably about 7 reminders by this stage. She really, really needs to be paying that. And we're going to charge her for that. On the plus side, that's actually going to probably help her remember next time, because she's not going to want to pay that late fee next time. We can create an inventory item for that late fee and pull that through. I think I have one. Oh, no. I think we have a fee. Lots of fees in there. I'll leave that one. We can select which GL that will go through to. We can choose if there's going to be a particular invoice description. Maybe that one literally just says that it's late fee. And we can also automate this. We can select the format of the invoice we want to send through, and we can send the email template. Maybe you want to adjust or duplicate your existing invoice attached template and rename it to become your late fee template of, hey, we have tried to reach you multiple times or emailed you multiple times. You have not paid it on time. As per our T's and C's, we are now charging you a late fee. Please reach out to make this final payment. You can even restrict this late fee from going out to certain categories. Maybe it's only going to be for your annuals or your permanents. Maybe it's just going to be for your booking client accounts, not your companies or your travel agents. And maybe it's only going to be applicable for accommodation charges, not if people have long stay guests that did have overdue electricity charges. So you can play around with that and set it exactly as you need it. The other thing with that one is with Jane is if there are particular guests that you do know need to be exempt, or you want the default to be exempt, you can set that one here as well. So if an invoice is overdue, that guest isn't going to be affected by that late fee creating. So once again, it's all about setting it up based on your terrible forgetful guests that are wasting your time. You can get that reimbursement, help them remember, because they do not want to pay that additional late fee, but at least to value, let them know that your time is valuable, that they can't keep not paying those fees when they need to. Some clients even adjust that contact template that goes out with the late fee, letting guests know that a late fee has been charged, and that because you have their credit card details on file, that you are actually going to use that credit card on file to take those fees so that they stop being late. So once again, whatever your processes are, this is a really great way to save you so much time and to friendly, helpfully remind your guests that they do have overdue invoices, and give plenty of time to reach out if they need to. Obviously, when your guest does go to pay those wonderful invoices. Let's jump back to our client account and go pay. Let's grab, where is our invoice one here? Pay. Other automation sides of things, if we were to just grab cash, rather than saving our payment and then going to add a contact, grabbing that receipt to let them know that has been paid, this little button here means that if you click it and click save, it will automatically obviously save your payment and also send an email of your receipt to your guests using your receipt attached template. You can even adjust which template is going to go out using your email template defaults. And that will just pull through nicely so that that guest does have a copy of a receipt and does know that they have paid it. So once again, really quick, really easy to get those receipts to your guests when they have obviously made those payments. You can also go one step further using automated contact. In here, I've created one for receipt attached. If I go into edit, I can see I have a contact template called booking receipt attached. You can use your receipt attached one, but it's triggered after the event of a payment being taken. So when you are adding a payment or when it's been taken online, fantastic. A receipt will also pull through as part of with our contact template up the top here. So even without having to do what we previously did, that guest is going to get a copy of that receipt. Now you can have different receipts or contact templates sent through based on booking statuses. So maybe just our tourists, so our confirmed or unconfirmed people that haven't arrived yet. Maybe you might want a different contact template going out for our guests that have departed, or maybe not sending it to departed guests because they've been and gone with they well and truly kind of left and we don't need to really follow up on. Or we could even filter it by different categories of, hey, we don't want this to go out to our annuals. We're going to do something a little bit different for them. But for all of our tourist bookings, we just want them to get a receipt nice and quickly, easily, save us the time of having to actually send that manually ourselves. You can even add in additional filters of booking source, once again, if your travel agents or kind of companies weren't applicable in that side of things. Okay, so I want to just quickly, I know we are running a little bit shorter, but the last thing I want to go through is our reports. So we have a whole heap of different reports that are really good for tracking who owes you money, who you owe money, and a bit of both. So client account debtors, there's a whole heap of settings in here that you can filter by status or even booking source. But this is going to tell you, based on this date, where our clients are at. We don't care about bookings that are all the way next year that owe us money. We only care about people that owe us money now. So this date, super, super important. It's going to look at the generated dates of our charges and our payments that are in our client accounts. If I give this a click, this will load all of the people that owe me money. You should be checking these reports at least monthly because there should not be this many guests, hopefully in your database, as in my training database, that I need to be following up with. I'm going to jump into one of these, which is Jane Doe. Now, Jane is appearing, as we can see down the bottom, she owed $50. She paid $50, but she still owes $300. She's on my debtors report because of this payment down the bottom. Her balance is showing as $300. If she is meant to be $0, we need to reflect what else has happened here. Now, if this was that the guest is cancelled and this charge is no longer applicable, we need to cancel the booking so that this $300 charge disappears. Alternatively, if we were going to create a credit for her or that she has already made a payment and we've forgotten about it, we need to pop this in here so that we can reflect that the payment has been done and that's why she's at a $0 balance. It's all about putting your Sherlock Holmes hat on and looking at exactly what we see here, because these figures will add as a calculator. And whatever figure you have here is based on the settings we have here. So it's minus 300 because 500 minus 50 minus 50 minus 300 is minus 300. So if you're ever confused about that, it just simply means something's missing or something's there that shouldn't. In this case, our guest has well and truly left back in 2023. We know we're not going to be able to get those funds from her. So what we want to do is we want to add a credit to raise this to zero. This guest has left, the booking client account should now be zeroed out. We want to jump in to create a credit. Now, generally it's a really good idea if you create an inventory item such as bad debt write-off, just simply so it will grab the applicable client account. I've forgotten what that amount was, but I think it was $39. Please make sure you are checking that amount before you do so. And we're going to click save. I definitely didn't have the right amount. It was 300. But if I had popped in the correct amount, I'd then be able to come in here and reconcile. That would then show I had a lovely $0 balance and I wouldn't have to worry about that anymore. Because we are short on time, I'm going to jump ahead to our next client account or our next report, our client account creditors. Once again, same settings. We can filter our statuses, our sources. We can even adjust our dates and we can run our report. Now, one of the creditors that is showing here, we have lots of them, is Tom. And we can click into these little links to jump straight to those client accounts to see why he is a creditor. Now, in his account, we can see that he did make a payment. I can hover over his booking to see he cancelled. We need to know why he's still in credit. Are we keeping this money? Are we meant to have created a cancellation fee to absorb this money? Is it that we were meant to be refunding this guest? Or have we actually refunded this guest and not added it in here? Or is it that we're holding this money for a future booking? If this is the case, we need to update this. This needs to be exactly what has happened in regards to this booking. And because this booking has finished, this should be a $0 balance. So if it is the case that Tom has this money and is going to hold it for a future booking, we know this booking is done, this balance should be 0, and we need to transfer that money to either if Tom had another booking already in the system, we could select that booking and transfer that deposit across to his new booking. Now, these are all old bookings, so instead we're going to move it to his guest client account. As I said before, the guest client account is where we're going to store all of these credits so that we know this booking is finished, but we can store that amount in the guest account for when we do have that future booking ready to go. Because we haven't created the booking yet, it's not a deposit just yet, but then we would click transfer. I'm going to jump into one more report there for you, which basically merges those two reports together, which is our balances dated report. This allows you to see the debtors and creditors, or either or. Once again, you can even filter by those client account types or booking statuses and so on. If I run this report, and obviously I've got a few settings in here, I've also added some additional columns to show me how long this account has been in credit or debit. Now for Robbie down the bottom, it's been over 365 days that he has had this credit in his account. It well and truly something needs to be happening by now. Or I need to follow up with Robbie to see if he is ready to use that balance for his future booking. Now for Robbie, I've maybe tried to reach him. Maybe his phone number is disconnected. And I know that that money that he was transferred from a cancelled booking back in 2023, he's not going to use for a future booking. So I want to not leave this as zeroed out for forevermore. My accountant would hate me. I need to balance this out. And how I can do it is very similar to what we did before with bad debt write-off, but to have a credit absorb. So we're going to create a charge to absorb our payment. Once again, if you do have a inventory item or create an inventory item, this is a really good practice. Obviously trying to remember what that amount was, and then you could click save. That means that account would now be balanced. We would know exactly that Robbie has well and truly been and gone. We're keeping that money. We're no longer going to keep it for a future stay. So I hope you enjoyed all of those reports. We're going to finish off with one last quick quiz. Because I'm quite curious if anyone has been listening. There is one really important thing with these reports. I'm curious if anyone can remember what the key thing for all of our creditors, debtors, and balances dated report is. What is going to, if we run this report and someone's showing that shouldn't be, we've gone to the client account and it doesn't look quite right, or it's all completely balanced out, why could it be that a person is on this report? Okay, so I think everybody has popped in their answers, or almost. We've got the last few little people, I believe. If you want to pop those in, we can finish this poll. And so remember, we're having a look here. We can see We've got a whole heap of different settings on this page. One of those is really, really important as to why a guest will appear on this report when maybe their account is actually fully balanced. Okay, just in the sense of time, we might actually, oh, it looks like we're sharing those results. Booking status is definitely something that is useful to hide them away, but it's only going to filter them out, not technically remove them from those reports. So kind of correct, not quite. Our generated date, the date we put here is the vital important one. So if we jump back to, oh, I think I might have closed her. This one here. Yeah. If we look, for instance, or actually, where's one of our other reports? All of these dates are going to be really important. So if we run a report and we put in a previous date, if we go for instance, the 1st of April, the only thing for this guest on the 1st of April is that he was or did have a credit of $40. All of these extra items haven't appeared yet. It's basically acting as a time machine. So if we're running this report for now, we can see he's $39 in debit. But if we run this report for maybe the 2nd of April, his account is $40 in credit. So really, really important if you do look at this account, it's not quite matching up, that you are making sure that you're maybe running it per day or that you are reviewing those generated dates. Awesome. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to our team, but I hope you've learned a whole heap of really useful things to help feel a little bit more confident in using the system, and hopefully a few other things that you're going to jump in and start setting up in regards to that automation as well. If you can stick around a little bit longer, we do have a short survey at the end of this webinar. We would love to hear your feedback, especially on any future webinars and topics that you'd love to hear from us. Do remember that this session is recorded. It will be on our YouTube channel, so if you do want to rewatch it or forward it through to any other staff members, you will be able to do so. So have a good one and look forward to chatting to you next time.